Level up with the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member? Upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/commanders. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Com Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Have some new stuff up there about Zach Ertz and what's going on with him, which of course I'm going to address right now, but you can also read about it on ESPN.com. So also a couple other things before I get into my second thoughts and the AAA game review, et cetera, or more of a AAA second thoughts review. But don't forget for on Tuesday night, the live stream, Bram Weinstein and I, the voice of the Commanders, 7:30 Eastern time. I know it's going to be a lot of fun since they've won 8 in a row, right? What isn't jolly about talking about a team that's lost 8 games in a row? So maybe we'll try and talk about something else. I don't know, because, there are some big picture things to discuss with this team. I'm not going to rehash the Minnesota game because by that point, folks, whatever, right? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about here, but how it pertains to what's going on in this situation. So anyway, but that's 7:30 Eastern time. And then for you club members, I'll be doing a private Zoom on this week. I believe it's Thursday this week. So I'll stay tuned for that. And there you go. So let's get to the second thought. So first, well, let's go to the injuries first, because obviously with the biggest thing is Zach Ertz now done for the year. And you have to wonder what this means for his career. He just turned 35. He tore his ACL. You hope that it's only just the ACL and that there's not anything worse beyond that. All we know is that it was the ACL. That was a tough hit. And, so it's very unfortunate for Ertz. And like I said, he turned 35 in November. It's a 9 to 12 month recovery period. You just have to wonder. And that's partly why Ertz showed so much emotion, that he has to know this, right? Like the tears in the sidelines, when I saw him leaving the locker room, the red face, the red eyes, and just you could see it on others that were close to him as well. So just, it's unfortunate, and you hope he gets better, but you do wonder what it means for his career. If that was his last play, he retires, he would go out as the 5th all-time leading pass catcher as a tight end. So he just moved into that spot last week, so that's good for him. Again, we don't know. But you wonder about that, right? Anyways, he meant a lot here in only 2 years, and I'm going to play this clip from Dan Quinn about what Ertz meant to this franchise over the last couple of years. It's important to know, this is why they signed guys like Ertz. So, but here's what Quinn had to say today when I asked him about it.
I had a quick conversation with him today because I hadn't coached him before. So, you don't know somebody, and he was actually the first person, that Adam signed here. And so he has brought a lot. And I think, the habits, John, that's what stuck out to me more than anything, of doing the extra, not getting bored with the details, whether it was getting the jugs, footwork, the technique part of it. So there was a reason why this type of success took place. It was over and over of doing the things and not getting bored doing them. So those are the type of elite habits when you're putting a program together. You're like, okay, that's what it looks like, and I want to point that out whenever I can. So it's been significant for us, for sure. The production on the field, obviously having that, a tight end available. We knew a rookie QB was going to be coming in here to be a factor, and so he was an impact and more.
But again, this is why they signed Ertz, Wagner, Austin Eckler, guys like that last year, to help provide that foundation, guys that work a certain way and are kind of wedded to that, as Quinn says and others have said there, the boring process. It's what Jayden Daniels does. It's why I think, what he has to do is stay healthy, right, and be durable. But the other stuff he's got down. So, but that's why they signed these guys, to provide that sort of impact in the locker room and the foundation and rebuilding this place. Now, we know that a lot of work needs to be done after this year, and you can't just rely on older guys coming in. By this point, you better have some of those younger guys ascending to those roles and showing others, hey, this is the standard here. We got whatever the record is. This is the standard. So you now have guys in your program who've been here for a couple of years that they need to take over, and you need a deep infusion of talent and younger talent at that. So anyways, that's the update on Ertz. And then obviously with Jayden Daniels, Dan Quinn said on Monday that he was examined by doctors in the morning, so clearly, it was get some tests done on the elbow. No concerns about long-term damage. That's a good thing. We don't know yet what it means for Sunday, and I'd be curious to know like what you guys think. Should they even play him on Sunday or the rest of the year? And I know there was a big debate going into this. Most people, I think, would have agreed like you need to get out there and play. I think if he's healthy, they're gonna put him back out there. So if not, if there's a question, then you sit him for this week, especially. So we'll see. But I'm curious your thoughts on that. So leave some of that in the comments. But that's what's going on with that. So let's get to some of the second thoughts here. And I'm going to start with the roster construction. Let's go big picture first, because this came up in the press in Quinn's press conference on Monday. So it's worth discussing at least a little bit at this point about what's going on there. And listen, man, we're going to have the whole off season to talk about all this stuff. So I don't want to jump the gun too much, because by February, it's like, well, now what? Hey, what kind of Oscar movies have you seen? Whatever. Like, we can't get into all that. So, but we're going to touch on all these topics and then dig into those as we get into the offseason. So, Hail Nation, take your fandom up a notch. Check out the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll get all the reliable AAA benefits like 24/7 roadside assistance, plus exciting Hail Nation extras like opportunities to win game tickets, attend exclusive events, and 15% off the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? No problem. You can upgrade for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join today and become a true Commanders MVP and Hail Nation member. Yeah, I think for the roster construction, let's go there. So it was brought up in the press conference today about this. But one thing I would say for Quinn, I think there's a couple things that are important here going into the offseason, that because of the type of season they have, like I would be surprised, if he's not back. But if you finish very poorly, and this is what I've been talking about, if you finish really very poorly, there's going to be a lot of speculation in the offseason, going into the season, about what could happen. And it's just not a good place for this franchise to be there so soon. So that's why I say, like, I know everybody wants that fifth pick, and you can finish strong and still get a high pick. And because they're going to get a high pick at this point. And so, but you don't, if they have like 4 more games like Sunday, it's a horrendous sign. And again, great to get that fifth pick. It ain't enough, folks. So you're going to be in a position next year at this time where you're like, what are we talking about then? So, so I think that's why it's like, I think, again, the best case scenario for you, win a game, or, even if it's 2, you're still only 5-12. But be competitive. Like, you cannot look like yesterday. You have to be competitive. And, if you're shorthanded, okay. But if you're 31-0 against other teams, it's a really, really bad sign. And again, like the deep problems that would expose, and that would be mostly about the roster. So let's get to that roster and just touch on this. So the first thing I would say for Quinn is, when you look at this, if you're going to, like, these guys are going to have to report to Josh Harris. So everybody talks about people holding them accountable. The guy who holds them accountable is Josh Harris. Like, whatever we ask, it doesn't matter. It's Josh Harris. And Josh Harris, some previous owners may have paid attention to things that were asked and be swayed by sentiment. That's not this owner. So I hate to tell you that, but that's not this guy. And you don't want that guy you don't want the other guy to be in charge. But in this case, what he wants is information. He wants a plan. It's how he's run all his teams. It's what he's done with the 76ers. When I talk to people there about him, like, this is what he wants. And again, detailed information, but you better have a plan, and a detailed plan about, okay, defense was bad this year. What is your plan to fix it? What is your plan for the staff? What is your plan to, are you going to change anything? And for Adam Peters, what is your plan for the roster? Like, those are the things that they're going to have to answer to, and it better be detailed and it better be good, because that's what it's going to go by, right? And so, like, that's going to be the big key for those two, for Quinn and Peters, is to make sure you have those things squared away and are well thought out. And you can't just say, hey, we're going to run it back. Look, what we're doing is working. No, it's not working. Something didn't work. yes, the injuries have been a big factor, especially on offense, but you cannot write this year. I think it would be a big mistake to just write, and I don't think they would either. Like, I think these guys are too smart for that. I think there have been times in the past where you wonder about some things. I think in this case, I think they're smart enough to know that, yes, the injuries have been an issue, especially on offense, but defensively, there are too many games where you weren't even competitive. That is a problem, and I think so it extends beyond the injuries, and that's what they're going to have to figure out. But Quinn did say that, and I think I would say this too. One other thing about Josh Harris, for this kind of a situation, like go check out what the 76 happened with the 76ers last year. Like they were destroyed by injuries. So he has experience at least and say, okay, what is it that we're seeing here because of the injuries, and how much is it the injuries, and how much, and also I think it allows for a level of patience that maybe others wouldn't have, maybe, but because he has gone through this with his other sports teams, that's where having a sports background as an owner, also he was an athlete too, but also as an owner really helps in this situation. So you don't want to underreact. You don't want to overreact either. And by underreact, I mean, like, again, you don't want to just write off like, well, hey, we had all these injuries. Like, no, you can't do that because there were too many other things that didn't happen, that didn't go right. And you still could have put together a team that looked better than this. That's the bottom line. So, and I'd say they all know that. And I think Josh Harris knows that as well. So I don't think it's going to be, I don't think you can't, again, you can't dismiss it all to injuries. And you have to dig into, okay, yes, the injuries affected this and this, but what affected this? Why was this going on as well? And we'll get into some more of that too. But one thing that Quinn did say is that he and Adam are already talking on how, because I think it was David Aldridge asked about this, like, are you, how are you looking at like the player evaluation process? Like you're not even competitive right now. So how are you reassessing any of that at this point? And yes, there's still a month to go in the season, but he said that they already are discussing a lot of this stuff and said they're fully underway on discussing how they come to these evaluations and what maybe ways either to improve it or just what went wrong, all those discussions, because that's the only way you learn. And remember with Quinn, this is a guy who after he was fired in Atlanta, went through that 360 review. So he's very adept at taking like, hey, this is what people are saying about me, and in a negative, and it wasn't a positive stuff. And it was a lot of it was all anonymous, but it was stuff that he took to heart and tried to change to make himself better. So I don't think they're going to sit there and say, oh, okay, this is okay. I mean, I know this has happened here in the past with multiple regimes where they didn't change a whole lot. And I don't know what they will change here. Sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes it could be the way they rate guys or the kind of guys they look at, or just the way you delegate, what you need to do, where you need to be more involved, whatever it is. I think that's one good thing here is that these are, Quinn is very open to learning, growing, and changing or tweaking what you do, because you're not going to change midstream. I think there's some things that have worked, which is like the standards are set, etc. Those are all good. Like that's still good. Sunday was a clunker, and they know that. But I think otherwise, going into that game, I told you, you couldn't tell if they're 3-9 or 9-3, but didn't help them Sunday. But I do think long term that is a good thing. So that's good. But then there's other things like, is it on defense? Was it about the staff? Was it about the talent? How do how are you going to process and assess that? Going through that and coming to an agreement on what kind of things went wrong. Was it the scheme? Was it this? Was it that? So there's a lot of things that you can dig into to get on that same page to help you grow as an organization, because they have to. And, remember, like Adam Peters is only in his second year as a GM, so he too has to grow with this. And one of the things that he's been good at is working with his coaches. And he was like that in other stops. And I know in San Francisco, he was not the GM, but he was good at identifying and working with the coaches because he had a big say, obviously, in the draft. So things like that. So I think there's things that, like, that's what's going to have to happen a lot for sure. And because, as it's funny because, like, as Quinn said, and I just told you about standards and the way they practice, he said, like, based on what they see in practice, he was not ready for them to have that type of a performance. But they have very thin margins for error right now, and the games can get away from them in a hurry. And I think especially against a team like Minnesota, where it became non-competitive after late in the second half, after they didn't score going into halftime, like, and then not scoring on the first drive of the second half, like it was kind of a wrap because they just had nothing going after that point. But again, thin margin for error with this group, in part because of injuries, for a variety of reasons, but also I think because of the indirect impact of the injuries, which goes back to offense and defense, some of the game plans or the paring down of stuff, but it leads them to be very non-competitive. And so I think, like for example, one another, I guess I'm kind of rambling. I'm not giving direct thoughts, but here's another thought. The defense has had to pare down, but in doing so, it leads to predictability. And so like one of the, it's funny because like before yesterday, it's, oh, okay, they're playing faster on defense. And part of that is because they simplified some things. Well, by simplifying too many things, there's a reason why teams make defenses a little bit more complex because you need to make the offense think. You need to get them to pause. You need to not have them know on third down, they're probably going to run this defense. And then there it is, right? So now you've got this cover 4 beater, quarters beater, cover 2 beater, whatever it is. They're playing zone, right? You know that. So and they're rotating and they're only using a couple different zones. Yeah, and so like it just becomes easier to diagnose. And then especially for a good offensive coach like Kevin O'Connell, and that helps a struggling quarterback like JJ McCarthy. So like those are those thin margins. And so like while you're not ready to have that type of game, it can get away from you because if you let this team get off the hook a little bit and then they have a defense like they do, now you're in trouble. And that became a worst case scenario for sure. And I mean, listen, like there have been too many non-competitive games. So I was looking at like in the last 7 games, 5 by 20 or more points they've lost. Like this is one of the worst stretches that I've covered. And I went back and looked at like games from like some earlier years that were really bad. And more often than not, those bad years are in years where coaches are in the last year of their last year. Well, it's their last year here more often than not, because like 2023 with Ron, they lost 8 in a row. They had a 35-30 and a 28 and a 17, but there's also 3, 8, 2, 12. So some other games that were a little bit more competitive than what's going on in this stretch. 2013 was Shanahan's last year. They had down the stretch when they lost every game, it was they had 7-8, 21-7, 35-1, 14. So more competitive outside of you remember the Kansas City game in the snow, like that was non-competitive. There are a couple, but by and large, it was better than what we're seeing. And, 2019, the last year with Gruden, that was the Callahan year, lost a lot of games by double digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games by double digits. That wasn't competitive, but there was a whole lot of stuff going on there. But the point is, those are years where change is coming, and that's there will be. I'm sure this is not a report, so understand that. But when seasons go like this, that there is some level of change, whether it's player related, staff related, whatever it is. There's going to be some level of change, and they're so they're going to have to turn it over. But again, the point is, like even in Zorn's last year, they lost, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games by 1 score or less. Like that's way better than what's going on here. And they had 1, 2, 3, 4 losses by double digits, 1 by more than 20, by more than 17. So like more competitive than what we're seeing now. And so like that's a problem. And they know it. Like you can see it on Quinn's face when we talk to him. He knows this. Like it's not like, I mean, he knows how to count. He knows what the scoreboard is. Like he's not dumb. And so they know that this is not acceptable. They know that this is not the standard you need. If you are going to practice a certain way and have these standards, you need to see results at some point. And we saw it last year. And it was not just because of Jayden Daniels. He's a huge, huge part, but there are other things that went into it that paid off as well. And some part of it was health as well. Like they had good health last year, not this year. That was also part of it. Jayden was a huge part of it, but not the only part. And so, schedule was a part of it. Schedule was a part of it this year. It all works. It all goes together. But they haven't been competitive, and that. So let's go. Let's get to the offense for a couple minutes, and I want to go there because one of my thoughts, I'm still encouraged by the offensive line. So when I rewatched a lot of the passing game from Sunday, and I'm still encouraged by the O-line. Like that is still a building block on this team. I think it was 2 sacks. There was a good amount of pressure, but that pressure was coming from the blitz. And it wasn't because the O-line just getting whipped. It's because they were sending more. And they actually, where they got hurt is the Vikings did a great job of fooling them about what was coming. And I think this goes back to, okay, you have a young quarterback making his coming back, and you're facing this kind of pressure. And then you have, to be honest, it looked like the Vikings had the answers to the test on offense and with their defense. Like they did a really good job of understanding what was coming, whether you want to say that things were predictable or whatever it is. They certainly a lot of times where they're dropping into areas where they knew that Jayden wanted to go with the ball. And so that makes it hard for him. Now, what can he do stuff better? Well, this is why you wanted to get back in there and play. There was a little bit of a difference. I was watching JJ a couple times, McCarthy, and sometimes in those zone coverages, like he kind of manipulated a little bit with his eyes enough to where like there was one time where I was going to get into this in a minute, but I'll just talk about it now, which because I think that's key to what you want to see. Little things like that from Jayden. I think when you haven't played in a little bit, sometimes those details you've got to get those back, and sometimes it's a matter of like, okay, you got a hook guy here, curl here, or whatever. Stick routes, whatever you want, whatever they are. So maybe you're going to look over here quick and just manipulate that linebacker a little bit, and now you come back here. I saw McCarthy do that. I think that's one thing that for Jayden, like those are the things that you want to see as he gets back into his rhythm, right? Because he does it, he can do that. Nice. It's not like he doesn't. So it's sometimes like in that rush. What they did, and sometimes I would say this: when you're facing a four-man rush that's not getting home, a little bit easier to do that. When you're facing a blitz where they're getting to you, a little bit harder to do that. So you've got to get rid of the ball quick. And he wasn't holding the ball that long. That wasn't the issue. So the issue was free rushers, right? And they were like, there were times where you'd see. I really was impressed with what Minnesota did, and I really like what Brian Flores does. Because like they get after guys and they're very aggressive. And I think I really like that style of defense, but they also like they would show 7 and rush 5. They'd show 7 and rush 4. They'd have 4 up on the line, 2 linebackers in the normal set, and those guys would blitz. They'd send 2 linebackers up the middle, and one's going to influence the center. And if whoever the center takes, they're going to go. The other guy's going to rush. So it was like that all game where there's like you're playing a game of who's going to blitz here. And I think that makes it difficult to know. But the other thing what they would do too is they're dropping into areas of coverage, right? Like so, or areas where they know he wants to throw. So you got Terry on the one-on-one on the outside, you want to slant, got a linebacker dropping right there with a blitz coming in your face. It just makes it tough. And sometimes they'd rush 5 or 6, and a 6th or 7th guy would just kind of start but stay back and get in that passing lane because they knew where he liked to go a lot of the times. It felt like. Based on I would say this, it kind of certainly felt like they did because they kept dropping into areas that would take guys up. And I think that was a problem. So, but they are very, very aggressive. And I think, there are a lot of times, sometimes like with Jayden, you didn't always see guys open. And that becomes a problem when you're trying to get rid of the ball against blitz. Again, some of that wasn't just always the receivers not getting open. Sometimes they were kind of getting open, but you'd have a guy drop. It wasn't their ability to create a matchup, win a matchup. It was where the Vikings were dropping into coverage, right? So, and just in the exact right spot. There was, I think there was like on the 3rd and 2, there was a 3rd and 2 where Jayden converts and he dives for the first down, but like that time, like there was a flat curl. They love that flat curl concept where they take that away. So now he's got to run because that's taken away. Show pressure drop. But even on the run, like one of the things that I'm curious about from him is, sometimes like this was last year. They want to keep your eyes on field, keep the ball alive. Well, in this one, Terry's kind of open there. How is he open enough for him to throw it? And he doesn't throw it. Is that a comfort thing? Is it a trust thing? Is it a, hey, get back into your rhythm thing and throw it? Not so much. That's not a rhythm play, but it's when you're in the rhythm of your game, right? Where that you just got it going on. Like that's a throw. Maybe you make. Maybe there's a guy right in the kind of vision. You got the safeties a little bit over there. Some guys can make that throw. Some guys do not, right? And so I think one thing with Jayden is he has done a good job by and large in his career of protecting the ball and protecting points. So he picks up the first down with the run. Maybe you could have gotten that. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you pick up the first down. And that's what he did. But there's another time where you keep the play alive. There's one time where I think he ran and you have possibly have one to Zach Ertz for an 8-yard gain, but he runs with it. He gets, I think it was 5. So it's not a horrible thing, but it's finding ways to maybe cut down on how much you have to run, right? Because we know that that is something that he and they want to do. And the more you play, get back into your rhythm, maybe some of that takes place. And I think like that's a big thing for him. But again, I credit Minnesota's defense for what they did, and just the way they play is fun to watch. And they are very aggressive. And I think what they do is, you always hear coaches we want to dictate to the offense. Well, they do. I haven't seen that here in a while, right? But these guys do that. And so when you do that, like it pairs down, that, hey, if we're going to send this, we're going to do this. Here are their responses. So let's show this and take those responses away. So that's one thing too for Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury is like finding ways to provide more answers that may help the quarterbacks in those situations. So I think that's going forward, that will be the task for him, because you're going to when they face some of those defenses, they've had some more issues, right? And so like that's something that they're going to have to look at. Like, how can you move the ball against some of these defenses that will do that, because you will face it again, right? And so that's Kingsbury's task in the offseason. And so there you go. But I think that is one thing, like, can you provide more answers for Washington's quarterback, for Jayden Daniels or whoever is playing quarterback, but for Jayden. And then, but Minnesota took away a lot of what Washington can do just by the positioning, and that's what you want to see on defense. So, hey, Commanders fans, want to make every drive a winning one? With the AAA Commanders MVP membership, you'll get trusted AAA roadside assistance, score Commanders gear with 15% off at the online pro shop, ticket giveaways, and exclusive team experiences. Whether it's game day or a weekend getaway, AAA keeps Commanders fans covered at home or on the road. Upgrade your current membership or join the team today at AAA.com/Commanders and drive like an MVP every day. I have a couple thoughts at the goal line too, that little sequence, because that was a big sequence. That was a terrific drive that Washington put together in that one. They had a couple nice plays, good conversions. Jayden connects with McLaurin on the one out. You have the 3rd and 13 to Debo. That's a perfect play for that. Like you have Ertz and McLaurin out there blocking, and Debo picks it up. That's what you got him here for, is those kind of plays. And so things were working. Then you get inside the 5, and like, you give one run and then 3 pass. So I'm going to start with the one I really like, the one to Brandon Coleman. That play should be there. That play, I think, was there. Now so the two things I wonder about, like, this is a wonder, not a direct, hey, I know this happened, right? But there's a couple things with it. I did send some of the tape to an offensive coach, not with Washington, but a guy who was a former offense coach in the NFL, like, knows his stuff, right? So send it to him, like, what do you see here? And this is my first thought when I watched it. And I talked to Logan Paulson about this as well. So, because he knows this is a play that he had run for touchdowns too. So one of the things that you look at with the play is, because when Jayden turns the corner, like when he starts to turn, Coleman's open, but Jayden's not yet ready to be able to throw the ball there, because what their thought, what certainly this offensive coach thought, was Coleman's got to hold it a little bit longer. So sell it for, and Logan told me, he's like, usually you're selling it for 2 seconds, and that's why this coach put it right, like, hey, left too early. So if that's not the case, I'll find out and let you know. But that was a thought there, is that maybe you get a little bit, you get excited, man. It's like a big fella touchdown. Who doesn't get excited about that? But that's why, like, because I wondered, Jayden starting to turn the corner, and he's already open, but you're not yet ready to throw. So that leads me to that one. So anyways, but it was good. The play should have worked. And I guess, there's a good play call, because I think it would have been open. But a good play is a successful one as well. So, anyways, 2nd down, has to throw it away. I felt like the Vikings did a good job. They have Ertz coming out in the flat route, just faking, coming out. Like, that's a thing that he does well. Like, he will run that flat route, which then sets up these little cuts to the inside. But this time they had somebody covered inside, so the linebacker goes to the flat. in the past, at times he's been able to get the linebacker to bite one way or another, but this time they had both areas covered. Nothing there, has to throw it away. The 4th down and 2 to Debo, that play to me should have worked. It was a good throw. He wasn't able to stand up and dropped it. But would I have liked to seen Rodriguez run one time there? Sure, of course, because they've been running well. Different ball game inside the 2 or at the 2, but he's still a power runner, and that's why he's been running the ball. Would have liked to seen that for sure, because that play and then the drive that followed was what cost Washington the game. So once they got that drive, like that was it. So you know, there you go. But they again, they to develop as this offense, you're going to want to develop better plans versus that kind of pressure because you will see it again. That's what I would say. So that's the big picture view of that is not so much, hey, this loss, but what do you take from this loss? And I think to me, that's one of them. Um, so, why have they struggled against some of those at times? Is that concepts that you have there? Is there not enough answers that you provide with quarterbacks? One of the things I always heard about, like with McVay and Kyle Shanahan, was they provide answers for everything. That's why it's quarterback friendly. So, do you have that ability? And so, what can you do to enhance that here? And I think that's one thing they'll have to going forward. All right, defensively, the last thing I say, and like I said, kind of hit on this earlier, like when you start to pare down too much, you simplify things a lot. So you might be playing faster, but again, there's a reason why you want defenses more complex. And that's part of it. So that becomes easier, like watching JJ, like there were times where again, there are weaknesses to the flat and some of these cover 4 looks, right? And you'd see them 3rd down, boom, automatic going there. Because you know that they rotate in there, you see it, boom, there it is. So like the answers are there for them. And that's Kevin O'Connell's really good with that too. So, and they didn't put enough pressure on him. And that's one thing, again, going forward, how can you generate pressure? Like, and some of it is you need to get better guys who can rush the passer, right? And so that would help. And then I think you also want to find more corners who have that versatility to play man or zone, because once you're locked in the zone, I think they've limited themselves to what they could do in terms of disguise. And I think you saw that. I think we saw that certainly on Sunday. That's one thing you would like to get. I think also then the details of the job. And so there was one time in the touchdown that again, when you're a linebacker in coverage, you still got a job to do. And at this one, like Frankie Louvu goes to jam the tight end, but he doesn't really get a good jam, and he kind of slides over. And the tight end goes. You want to impact the timing of the play, disrupt it a little bit. Doesn't do that, and then by the time the safety's over there, it's too late. And that was all she wrote. So, but those are little things that pop up when you're not going well. Like, can you get that done? I also think like the good thing for Frankie for this offseason is if they add another edge rusher, however you do it. But get him off the edge, get him back into a linebacker role where he can blitz a little bit. And I think, the other thing that, yeah, I just think that's you know, that's what they got to do. So that because like when you start looking at the roster, like that's the number one thing. You need an impact guy on defense somewhere, somehow, right? Could use a couple of those guys, but you need an impact guy and more good players. Like, you're not going to be able to spend on only a couple guys. So you want to, and you need more than a couple guys. Like you need more than one impact guy on defense, but you need to find one, preferably a young guy, and then find more good players that can fill in so you can actually build a good defense and then build something that's a lot more sound than it has been this year because it's just been really bad. And so there was a 2-game blip where they were better. Did not see it yesterday enough that they played, you just didn't see it so at all. And the inability to get off the field in that one, I'll tell you, like maybe the play of the game, no, I shouldn't say that. It's 31-0. But one of the bigger plays of the game early is that 3rd down and 6 where McCarthy's got the ball in his own end zone. It was one of the few times where Washington was aggressive with what they brought. And I know they were concerned with Jefferson and Addison, et cetera. But then on this one, and there was a simulated pressure. It was a 4-man pressure still, but they brought Quan Martin. They dropped. I think it was one of the linemen. But man, he's like so close to getting him, and he gets blocked out of the way. But it looks like he hits JJ's arm. If you cause a fumble there, if you get him off the field there as he runs, Von Miller has a chance to get over there. Not quite quick enough on that one for whatever reason, right? Not blaming him. It's just what it was. Couldn't do it, picks up the first down, and then there they go. You stop them there, you get the ball back at the midfield. Now you're in a better spot. And so who knows what happens from there. But once they got that lead, that was a wrap. And that's basically why Jayden Daniels didn't go back in the game. The other thing I want to point out too, and this is something I meant to bring up earlier, was the interception play. And it wasn't, if you watch the three guys who were hauling ass after that play, in some cases, like the linemen aren't going to get him, right? Terry McLaurin gets him because he never stops. And he has the best chance in that play based on where he was, where the pick was, but he doesn't stop. The other two guys, it was obviously Jayden who gets hurt on the play, but also Zach Ertz. Like there's a reason why some of these guys have elevate themselves to a certain level. It's because of efforts like that. And I think it needs to be pointed out too. Listen, effort should be the minimum for any player, right? That's everything you can give. When I used to coach youth basketball, all my players knew, I don't care what offensive guy you are, but you damn well are going to give me some effort on defense. Because if you don't, that's when you're going to hear from me, because that is a baseline of expectation. But when you see the guys like that doing it, like that speaks volumes about who they are for sure. And it's not necessarily a knock on a guy who's like 50 yards from the ball, has got no shot at it, and they know it. But when you do, and then you see them running that way, there's still a hunger for that, and it's why certain guys last a while, and why they elevate. So we just wanted to point that out. Anyways, folks, starting to ramble. God, that means time to cut it off. Appreciate you tuning in. Again, Tuesday night live stream, 7:30 Eastern time with Bram Weinstein, the voice of Commanders. Join me there. Talk to you next time.